Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Way Through. Of course, I am your host, Bonnie Worth, and so incredibly grateful to have the chance to hang out with you here again today for this conversation. This is a big one today, again, going to be really diving into the transformative power of triggers as they come up for us on our healing journey. But of course, this show is dedicated to helping and supporting you in being able to make your way through whatever challenges are coming up in your life. We take a look through the lens of mediumship, of metaphysical concepts, as well as looking at our power of conscious choice to co-create our realities and the experiences that we have with all of life, to really alter and change this relationship of what has been, challenge and suffering into a position or place of maybe a little bit more ease and bringing in a little bit more joy and flow into our lives. So I'm so excited that you're here, and I want to say I really appreciate the feedback. I've had several people reaching out, getting in touch, and just letting me know that they're appreciating the content, the conversations, and just loving what I'm sharing. So I'm so grateful for that, because it really is the very thing that continues to spark my passion for helping and being present, of course, for you and with you every single week. So I'm really excited, for what's unfolding, of course, in your life as well. So it's my greatest hope. Oh, here we go, for today's show, that there's something I share here today that is going to really help to bring in another layer for you in terms of your own transformation and journey to your place of peace and authenticity. And we look at the things that are playing out in the world around us, and there's so much that's going on that is really out of our control. And when we look at having had previous wounding or traumas or experiences in our past that lead to an emotional intensity. And when we look at the complexities of the world around us, it can often lead to increasing feelings of helplessness, of feeling completely overwhelmed. And so triggers are like stimuli, and it's like a stimuli to events and situations, sounds and smells and touch, and even just witnessing sometimes things on the news playing out, or overhearing a conversation in a coffee house, that can provoke strong emotional reactions in us based on our past experiences. And so this kind of stimuli really adds in another layer of anxiety, where, like as I said, our sense of hopelessness, or can really keep us looping or held and bound to the stories and narratives of our past experiences. And when we experience a trigger, and this is, it's the body's natural fight or flight response gets activated inside of us. And so that leads to various, complications emotionally, physically, and it's crucial for us to understand, one, that what we experience in a trigger is very, very real. So please know, as I come into this conversation here today, this is not to negate anything that you're going through in terms of your own personal journey or your healing. I think this is where, I'm coming at this from firsthand experience, based on my traumas, my wounding, the things that happened to me in my past, that I had to look at healing and finding my, that authentic resilience, building that authentic resilience to really claim my life back and take over what is a sense of control. So when we look at, triggers, that's really what happens, is we feel like we have no control, and we're completely moved back into a past experiences, and they can be so intense and so overwhelming and so difficult to be able to navigate. And so I'm going to just share, for today's show, as I said, the manifestation of what happens in a trigger is very, very real. And I do not want to negate your experiences whatsoever. What I do really want to do is bring in another perspective and offer you another way to look at triggers as an opportunity for healing, an opportunity for transformation, a gift, where we can begin to embrace the experience that we're in becomes a very empowering state to be. And it's from that state of being, when we look at the branch of metaphysics, of where we look at the state of being of ontology, where we're just how are we being in that moment, and where's our power and the autonomy that we can actually claim or choose in those moments. And so that is, what I want to help and direct and bring forward for you here today on the show. So as I said, it's, our fight or flight response. I mean, it's natural. And when we've experienced any kind of trauma or wounding, or as I said, even just paying attention to the state of our world right now, it really leads to this increased what would be acute anxiety. And we're seeing it more and more. More and more people are coming forward with realizations of their own challenge in being able to navigate what's coming up. There's an increase of people who are being diagnosed with anxiety that were maybe never had anxiety before, who are looking to, try to navigate life and navigate the world. It is so complex, and the situations and things that are occurring that feel so out of control for us, are resulting in these ongoing feelings. It's increasing the sense of panic or fear, which just reinforces this state of anxiousness. We're all feeling the anxiousness, and I think we can look at it, whether it be on the global scale of what's happening around the world, the different events that are occurring, whether they are natural disasters or whether in the war torn areas. We can look at the political stage and the things that are happening and playing out. It's really creating an exaggerated sense of a reaction inside of us that's making it really hard to cope. It's like increased fear, increased anxiety, the unknowns of the situation, and feeling, again, a state of what may be gloom or doom. And it's natural, for us to go into the state. I think I say natural because it's a part of our human condition. It's how we're programmed. We naturally fall into fear-based conditioning, when, as a part of what is the soul's expression for evolution in this lifetime. But that's, we're getting into some really big spiritual perspectives on that, and I don't want to digress in terms of what is, the point of our conversation here today. So, here as well, when we look at, when we've experienced wounding, when we've had trauma of any kind, based on, and again, I am not someone who defines trauma as a big T or a little t. To me, trauma is trauma. So I don't get into, in how it has been defined or how it's recognized, because for me, from my point of view, from everything I've experienced, is it really downplays the emotional impact of the experience. So by defining it in that way, it's saying that someone else's experience is bigger or more relevant than what mine is. It downplays it, and again, with my clients, I never ever want to downplay the experiences that happen, because the emotional response behind what happened is what matters. The emotional response, irregardless of the situation, of the circumstance, of the event that took place, the emotional impact that experience has had is what matters. And so when we've experienced anything, our emotional body gets dysregulated. The whole central nervous system gets dysregulated. And so anything, a trigger, when something, a smell, a sound, a conversation, someone's even presence with us, can provoke this activation that leads to, increase of, as of course, the anxiety, but also leading to other flashbacks, and feeling as if we are in the past in our experience, even though we're in present day. And it can make it very, very intense and challenging. We can look at, that really becomes symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder that begin to show up. And so this is intense anxiety, this intense panic. This is, it feels very overwhelming. And we have almost like an increase of, I mean, not only blood flow, pumping through our system, but there can be a sense of urgency and the fear that feels completely uncontrollable to us. It creates feelings of disassociation. Now, disassociation is something that I certainly, struggled with for a big part of my life. And I can say disassociation in some way was actually a gift as well, because it was what created a gap or an opportunity for me to engage with the non-physical world. I'm not saying that's how to go about engaging with the non-physical world. You don't need disassociation to do that. It's just for me that was one of the ways in which this really opened up, or really can became an access point in my own journey. However, when we look at it, it's like the emotional pain and the stress. We go into where we detach from our feelings, we detach from our emotion, we detach as a way to cope and manage through some of the experiences that we have when we are triggered in some way. And so, it's the sense of feeling. Um, Almost like observing ourselves outside of our body, and that's literally what happens. Is our spirit inside basically sidesteps and says it's too painful, too hard. This experience that I'm having right now is more than what the spirit inside of us is willing to participate in. And so our spirit literally sidesteps outside of our body. That's why we feel like we are detached. I would say probably for the vast majority of my life. I know I laugh about it now, but it just makes so much sense to me. And I'm laughing not because of the suffering that was there, but it just in part what of why I experienced life the way I did, and why things were so difficult, and why I struggled in to the degree that I struggled, is because my spirit was literally outside of my body for the majority of my life. And so that was, it's frightening, it's disorientating, and we're not really connected to who we are. We're not connected to our bodies. We're not connected to the immediate life experience, the people around us. And so it just creates another layer of complexity in functioning and dealing with, the things that come up. So again, the physical symptoms of being triggered. I mean, there's the emotional, there's psychological effects that take place here. And so, as I said, we have, that fight or flight response. I mean, there's the increased heart rate. We know we have difficulty breathing. You might even be someone who maybe goes into trembling. There can be some physical manifestations because there is a cellular memory that is activated inside of us when we are triggered. And it's that cellular response based on the cellular membrane, the what is actually the microgenetic field around the cell that holds all of this information about what has happened in the past, of the stories, the information, the belief systems, the um, the imprint of the traumatic experience. And so when we feel like we have no control, we feel like we have no control over the situation, over our emotion, over our reactions, et cetera, et cetera. So there is a lot here when we look at unpacking the impact of what a trigger can be. And again, as I said, just please know that I honor the experience that you might be having, because I know for a good part of my life I was in the place of being so overwhelmed that I couldn't cope with what was going on. And so, as I said, I don't want to negate the experience that you may be having in those moments for yourself. But what I do more importantly want to bring in is the transformative power that we have in the moment when we are triggered. And it's through awareness. And you've heard me say, before on the show, that once we have awareness to anything, it doesn't matter what it is, and this includes our triggers. Once we have awareness to what our choices can be in those moments, or what we can look at, how we can alter or change the experience that we're having in that moment. Once we have awareness to what's going on and where our power of choice lies, that really is, we're 50%, through the journey of whatever the experience was. And so it really, through those empowered choices in those moments, it really is what leads to not only helping to support and cultivating authentic resilience, but also in terms of our healing as well. So it really is, we can look at triggers as being, this is why I'm saying embrace them, because they are this opportunity that actually serves as a catalyst for us to take us out of that sense of discomfort and fear and dread, and really kind of sitting within the old information that we have stored inside of ourselves into a place of what is this conscious choice that leads to healing, this and cultivating that authentic resilience and becoming more empowered in those moments, which can really lead to some very profound and personal transformation. So, our empowerment is ultimate. And I mean, we can do that through the choices we're making. Now, as I said, even though triggers provoke this immediate or instinctive reaction that based on our human condition, what is innate, inside of us, those feelings that we have that overwhelm in those situations, they can cause us to react in certain ways. And I know for me that when something would happen and I was triggered, and later on after the whole everything was over, I regretted the whole thing. I was like, oh, Bonnie, you could have handled that better. That wasn't uh, maybe the best course of action to have taken. Or I might have regretted what I said, what I did, how I acted or didn't react, to situations because I was disassociated in those moments. So it really is, when we understand that reacting is simply a habit. It's our instinct. And so when we look at through awareness of understanding the opportunity with our triggers, we begin to understand that there's an engagement of what is our conscious choice in the process of this, where we can take what has been instinctual based on the human condition and change it to our having power over it, or taking autonomy over that whole experience. And the more that we consciously choose to do it, the more that it actually resolves the trigger. And eventually, over time, we're no longer in that state of that habit of reaction, but we've claimed our opportunity to respond with the autonomy, with the presence, with the sense of empowerment, of understanding. And eventually, what used to trigger us in the past no longer has a bearing or hold on us. Now, it's important here, this isn't something that happens overnight. You're still, things are going to come up. There still will be triggers. You still have to, continue to choose. But I'm just saying, over time, you're going to see it is what leads to where, again, as I said, that the trigger has no bearing, which means once it has no bearing, once there is no reaction, it's not occurring anymore. And so it really, I have found personally that this, what I'm sharing here with you has been so helpful in supporting me in my journey of overcoming, in my journey of really reclaiming my life and taking control, and being able to, and again, our egos love control, right? So but to having a sense of control over my life, of the situations, and giving me this opportunity to begin to really choose how I want to show up in the world, and how I'm choosing to show up in situations, and to become more empowered even in the moment. So, one, I think, how does this start out? Well, we need to recognize those emotional responses that we're having. I think that really becomes the first step in all of us. It's like when the trigger occurs, we need to pause. We need to take a moment and say, okay, hang on a second. What am I feeling right now? What's going on? Is this anger? Is this anxiousness? Is this sadness? Is this fear? We need to recognize what is prompting the trigger. We need to understand what emotion is driving our reaction, and really, what rather than, so once we can do that, it's no longer we're no longer allowing it to control us in that moment. So we want to recognize the moment we're triggered. It's like, okay, as soon as this happens, here's the key in it. I forgot one thing. It says, like, as soon as we want to recognize this emotional response, I want to encourage you to drop a grounding cord in that moment. As soon as you're triggered, drop a grounding cord. Bring yourself, your energy, your body, your mind, yourself into presence and ground in that moment. Now, if you are not familiar with what a grounding cord is, let me explain this to you. It's basically where we're dropping our energy and rooting to the earth for a sense of stability and a sense of security. And now we can look at it in terms of, for those of you who are familiar with, your root chakra, understanding you can drop, this grounding energy. But when I say drop a grounding cord, I mean in with your mind and in your imagination. Just imagine that there is a cord from the base of your spine that has a brick on the end of it, and imagine that it just drops and it lands into the earth. It's not just sitting on the grass, but imagine it makes an impact into the soil and it's sitting in the dirt. It's moving into the dirt. So drop a grounding cord. You might even see it go even deeper and deeper and deeper into the earth. Another way to do this is to imagine that roots are growing from your feet and that you are moving like a tree and you're allowing your roots to go deep, deep into Mother Earth. Anything that you can do to visualize or imagine that you are connected with the earth in that moment. That really becomes, when I say the first step is recognizing your emotional response, I would say the very first step is actually drop the grounding cord, which gives you an opportunity to recognize and just pause and say, okay, I'm grounded in this moment. I'm present in the here and now. And so, what emotion am I feeling? What is driving this reaction right now? It's a real way to become very mindful in that moment that gives us this chance to breathe, that gives us a chance to reflect and assess what's going on for ourselves. In doing so, we really create space for a space for a choice to show up here, whether that choice is just to continue to breathe in the moment, whether that choice is, in to just give yourself 5 seconds or 10 seconds to get your bearing on the situation. The moment you drop the grounding cord and you go into beginning to recognize the emotional response that's going on is the moment you actually stop your tendency for disassociation as well. And so being just it just gives you this chance to, instead of on the autopilot that leads to the anxiety and the panic and the fear and the increased heart rate and the feelings of, complete emotional overwhelm. This is going to be allow you to become much more mindful of the situation. We create space for a decision that about how we can choose to move forward in that moment. And sometimes the decision may mean that we need to separate ourselves out or leave the situation. That can be that's choosing a healthy response to the situation where we become armed, so to speak, with awareness and mindfulness so that we can consciously decide what is the best way to move forward here. What is my choice? How can I respond in this moment that is of a place from the higher self or from a place of what is in accordance to what I'm maybe being guided to do in this moment. But what it is that we can tune in, as I said, the moment we drop this grounding cord, become aware of the emotional response, we begin to tune in to our needs in that moment. And it gives us this opportunity to choose a healthier response for ourselves, where again, we're not being overrun by the emotional experience that we're having and caught up in what is the past and the sensations and the feelings and the memories and the overwhelm in that moment. Instead, we're bringing ourselves into presence and we're staying focused and aware of what's playing out and what our response can be. Also, in doing it, it's the very thing that allows for, as I said, when we go into a feeling of of reaction from a trigger and how we can automatically begin to disassociate from the experience in some extreme cases, that when we're doing this, it actually prevents the disassociation. It actually prevents your spirit from sidestepping your body and allowing you to stay more present, not just in your mind, but of course in your spirit. It is more present in the experience. And that's really where that connection to who you really are is what is going to really help you to again, not only reinforce your capability to move into an emotional response instead of a reaction. It's going to actually give you the opportunity to feel like you're not a victim of what's happening, that you are an active participant in your healing instead. And there's a really big shift that takes place. So things that used to be disruptive to you, you're now coming into a place in that moment of your own personal empowerment. So our triggers really, this is what allows us to reclaim our power over our past, because also gives us the chance to begin to reframe our narrative, to reframe it in the sense of, even in those moments, once we understand what the emotional response is, we can then begin to move into a place of affirming our well-being, of affirming our safety, of affirming that all is well. And we can just, it's like, I am not my past. I'm safe. Everything's going to be okay. It's okay. Just breathe. Begin to nurture the little one who's inside of us that is in a state of panic or fear, and we can become the voice that of nurturement, the voice of reassurance, the voice of affirmative wellness in those moments when we catch ourselves. So it's not necessarily about what's a better feeling emotion, because when we are in the middle of a trigger, it's difficult to get ourselves, into a better emotional state. We actually have to, it's like we have to convince ourselves that we are safe. We have to convince ourselves to a better feeling place. And I say convince because, we're dealing with our ego, and our ego and is so enveloped in the human condition that we have to come in as our own counselor, or as our own best friend in those moments, in order to help and support us in taking steps forward to helping us to get into a better feeling state. So it's not about what is a better feeling moment, a better feeling emotion. This is about, what am I feeling right now? What is this emotion? What is going on inside of me? And becoming aware of that, and then going, okay, what do I need? What do I need? Not trying to get ourselves out of it. I think this is where, I'm saying this is something I did, and I did it so wrong. I know there's no thing as right or wrong, but for me, and again, it was part of the journey and part of the learning for sure, is because I tried to stop whatever bad feeling I was having and replace it with a good feeling. I had whatever negative thought I was having, I tried to immediately replace it with a positive thought. And it basically, what it was causing was for me to spiritually bypass what was going on. And when we're in spiritual bypass, which means we are actually avoiding the presence of the experience, we're avoiding ultimately the healing. We are avoiding what is occurring, and so we're actually avoiding our transformation and the wisdom that can be gleaned from the experiences that we're having. And we're the opportunity again, to take autonomy over our lives in that moment. And so we want to, in order to not bypass the experience, we want to allow ourselves to be in the experience, but to be in the experience in a healthy way, and to be mindful of what we can do in the moment. What we can do is really check in with ourselves. What emotion is this, and what do I need? And once I've established what it is that I need, then following through with that, because whatever action you take based on what you need in that moment is where you're taking your power back in that moment. You are able to reframe the narrative, saying I'm safe. I need to know I'm safe. I need to know I need just to breathe. I need to step away from the situation. I need to turn off the TV. I need to say a prayer. Whatever it is, it's like, what do you need in that moment? And it gives you opportunity to really reframe things for yourself. And the more that, this is really opportunities where you come empowering yourself with light. You begin to bring in and cultivate what is your own your own inner strength. You're cultivating that authentic resilience, that you are looking to the higher self in that moment for the wisdom of what it is you require and need in order to propel you forward out of the previous, past experiences, and propel you forward into your, through healing. It allows you, there's a reclamation that happens here. There's a reclamation where you're really reclaiming your sense of self. You're reclaiming your autonomy, because you're shedding the old layers. You're shedding the insecurity. You're shedding the panic. You're shedding everything that has been been holding or binding you into the past experience, and allows you to really, begin to unearth some greater potential for yourself in support of your healing journey. So it's really recognizing that our triggers are these sacred opportunities that we are being given. We are being given in that moment to understand and know our own power, to know our own light, and of course, to know our own worthiness in that moment as well. That we are worthy of living our life without being inundated and overwhelmed by the pains and sufferings of our past. We are worthy of experiencing peace. We're worthy of, experiencing joy, and we're worthy of just having just a sense of self, and expressing what is our self. And even though it's, different, and maybe people judge us, like, what, that's a whole conversation for another show. But it's in those moments where we can really begin to recognize this opportunity that we've been given here. So as I said, the more that we're in that state of conscious choice, in those moments where we are not in reaction to what's happening, but we're allowing ourselves to ground, to take a look at, what is this emotion? What do I need in this moment? How do I find my breath in this moment? Being able to say, okay, and what is my choice? This really becomes a pathway for us to begin to move out of the past and into the present, and opening up to what is an ease of the future. Now it's, this is no longer, we're no longer in a surviving, in survival mode. We're no longer in this strategy of how do I handle this, and I can't allow this, and or we're suppressing or denying the experience, which of course is that natural response of our human conditioning. But it allows our mind to create a safe place. It allows us to have a mental refuge. It allows us, in times of extreme stress, where we can become more adaptive in being able to facilitate our own healing in those moments. Now, this is again, this beautiful, beautiful sacred opportunity. But there's another layer that comes in here, which is really, what I said earlier, was in times when this is happening, when, I over time, this is again over time, when in as I was less triggered in a reaction, and being able to be empowered in my state of response, and being able to take action accordingly based on what it was that I needed, that it really created this other opportunity where to it's like, instead of being caught up in the experience of the past, I came into this moment and went, okay, this allowed me the opportunity to call in help from my angels and guides, to call in help from my loved ones on the other side, to invoke and connect with my higher power in that moment, of just, of asking, and again affirming. When I talked about affirmative action in it, the affirmative, I am safe, I am well, I am, all is well, I'm, in this moment I am safe, in this moment all is well. Whatever it is that you need to convince yourself, remember I said the ego needs to be convinced of its current state. And so we do that first, but then it becomes this opportunity to become affirmative in a state of prayerfulness, where it's like, thank you angels, thank you God, thank you for this opportunity to completely release and let go the bearing of my past, so I can be at peace. I am at peace. I am experiencing ease. I am. The activation of I am. I mean, these are three words. I actually have the tattoo because they've been three words that have really given me my opportunity to make some affirmative choice in my life, because I am is a declaration to the universe, a declaration or an invocation of my higher power in those moments, and helping me to remember the higher power that is being expressed and lives within me as well. And so being able, to allow for this deeper connection in those moments to who I truly am, and to invoke and call upon what we could say are the powers that be, that can help and support us in navigating those situations as well. So I look at these as, a way to access not only our inner power and light, but it allows us to it creates this opportunity for us to get some help from the unseen world, in which to move forward from the experience, in which to have the healing in those moments, asking for there to be a healing download of light, and asking for, what has been stuck, and what the trauma, the experience, the impact of what this has been for me in this moment. I'm asking for that to be released and healed now, asking for it to be released and healed through unconditional love, through spiritual forgiveness, this opportunity to call forward and bring in whatever it is that we do need in that situation, not just what we physically need in terms of breath, in terms of separating ourselves out of the situation, but allowing us to go, okay, this is an opportunity and a chance for me to understand that I do have within me everything that I possibly need in order to alter and shift this very moment. I have everything inside of me to begin to alter and change the experience I'm having. And that can be done again just through this invocation of the I am. Our breath, and I want to, take this back to something I said earlier. When we are positioned in the trigger, when we drop a grounding cord and it gives us a chance to find our breath, there is so much healing available to us in our capacity to simply breathe and be where we are in that moment. Beginning to consciously, bring in more oxygen, more life force energy into our system in that moment is what also helps to regulate everything that we're in the experience of. So when we go into stress and panic, and we go into when we are triggered in some way, that there is a contraction that takes place, an energetic contraction, or a contraction that takes place inside of us, which actually causes us to go into a state of almost like hyperventilating or not being able to breathe. And yet, when we drop that grounding cord and we give ourselves this chance to be present in the moment into a state of response, that we now come into this chance to bring in more life force energy into our system to help to regulate our emotional body, to soothe the nervous system in those moments. And so through our breath, our ability to just focus on the inhale and the exhale, to slow it down, to begin to, instead of this reaction state, the body goes into contraction and reaction. And so the breathing becomes more shallowed and more difficult, and it's harder to catch our breath in those moments, where you can actually come into this presence within yourself, where you can even just focus on your breathing and allow for the breath, the expansion and the presence and the peace even that simply breathing can offer us. To take in more oxygen into our system allows everything to begin to settle and subside, and it allows us to become more coherent in, as we begin to understand what is our conscious choice in this moment, or what is it, what am I feeling and what am I experiencing. We want to understand that this it sounds so simple, to be able to breathe. But it is. Our bodies automatically breathe. We don't even think about, in the morning when we wake up, it's not like we have to turn on a switch in order for, okay, lungs start breathing, or okay, heart start pumping blood. It's happening. Our body is so miraculous and so supportive to us in these moments as well. And so it is another resource, just like in the moment when we can invoke upon a higher power, we can claim our own autonomy. We can begin to call in the help and support, and receive what it is that we require and need in those moments, not only from the physical world, but from the unseen world. When we can understand and know that in the moment, it's incredible. This is no different in understanding the power that we have in an autonomy over our breathing. It's not just based on what it is that our body is instinctively going into, based on, again, our body is an instinct and reaction, even based on those previous traumatic and experiences we've had, where now we can actually regulate our nervous system and regulate our emotional body by really focusing consciously on our inhale and our exhale, beginning to slow down and create a natural rhythm of breath, allowing the body the chance to find its natural rhythm. There's no right or wrong way to breathe. Like here again, it's not like, as I said, we need to tell our body to breathe. But by focusing intentionally upon the breath, we allow for the breath to become a natural source to also support and facilitate our healing in that moment. And so the more breath, this is why, modalities like breath work are so powerful in helping to regulate and heal. It's because there's so much available through that prana energy, through that life force energy, when we give ourselves opportunity to really breathe in what is available. And so we look at, where, regardless of the wound, regardless of the experience or what happened, we are naturally put into a response of that fight or flight response that causes us to react and disconnect and create almost like a fragmentation of an experience for us, or we become fragmented even from our own body and presence. And of course that leads to, feeling numb, living on autopilot, experiencing that sense of emptiness in ourselves and in our life, even with the people in it. And when we consciously look at these opportunities that are presented within, being triggered in the moment, we can begin to utilize what is our innate power, this divine power, this ultimate power, we can say, of the creator, of our source, in these moments, to basically call ourselves back, to call back, as I said, not only our spirit, but to call ourselves back into presence and recognize what we have possible for us in that moment, and that we can facilitate our own healing and facilitate our own experience at any given moment. And it allows us to really come into an opportunity to resolve some of those old wounds from our past. And as I said earlier, the more that we become conscious of what sits within the trigger, the more opportunity we have in order for healing. And so here, our triggers will often point us to those unresolved wounds that we have. And so when we're no longer ignoring or what has the emotion that's been buried there, it allows us to address it. It allows us to address every single trigger as a pathway for our healing, because now we're engaging with our emotions, we're engaging with the experience, and that ultimately is what opens the door for greater transformation. So when we encounter a trigger, I think, it's important that we look back, what is the root of this? And that's, again, when we look at one, in the moment of the trigger, this is where, again, I've given you, how do you navigate a trigger when it comes up in that moment? What is your opportunity of choice in that moment? How do you look at having power, your own power over the past, so that you're no longer impacted in the same way of what you were before? Now, once you're through the trigger, once you've settled yourself in, you've become aware of what you needed, you've called upon, you've asked for the healing. This is now where, again, when things have settled, this becomes the invitation. And the invitation is to go back to, can we trace the roots of this? What is the underlying experience here? What is the memory that was causing me to react in that way in that moment? That retrospection really allows us to examine some of the things that maybe we've conceptualized within ourselves, conceptualized in terms of, from those maybe feelings of being abandoned. I'm going to be talking about abandonment uh, next week on the show, because there's many ways in which we can experience abandonment. But maybe it was an argument with a friend that triggered that sense of abandonment for us, that maybe we had been abandoned, in a younger years, or maybe, neglected in some way. And so, that in that retrospective um, examination of our past allows us to really conceptualize why we reacted the way that we did. And when we conceptualize why we reacted a certain way, we're able to validate those emotions. And this is where, again, I am someone who totally believes that, I mean, for years I was told that, I was overreactive, and granted, I probably was. But I was too emotional, or and there's no such thing as being too emotional. For those that are sensitive, especially as an energy sensitive, as someone who is an empath in the world, understand that we are sensitive and these emotions matter. How we feel matters. And when we can conceptualize why we reacted and then take a look at the emotion, it's our ability to recognize that our feelings are valid, that our feelings matter, that what happened mattered. We actually create space for us to process everything, to process the emotion. It where we can, when we can articulate our feelings, we're becoming into a place where we are being able to express and resolve the very things that have we've been holding on to or hanging on to. And so we then can actively work through the pain. We can, look at one, you need help or support in doing this, of course, but it gives us an opportunity to really explore what happened, to begin to understand the emotion, and more importantly, it brings in this opportunity that is so transformative, which allows us to move into a state of forgiveness. And part of healing for ourselves involves forgiveness. And I mean, I'm going to talk about forgiveness on another show because, for me, from in the spiritual context of it is not about forgiving others. It's really forgiveness is, it's not condoning the hurtful actions. It's about releasing the hold of the resentment, releasing the hold of the wound that has on us. But it's about fostering a sense of compassion for ourselves and being able to understand that, we're all imperfect human beings. And so, in that really allows us to reconcile and move forward. It's really, where transformation, really takes a whole other layer. But and so we can look at, healing through our triggers can be very complex, yet ultimately it really is it's very liberating to understand that, not only can we cultivate a renewed sense of emotional wellness and cultivate that authentic resilience, that we can face, any challenges, we can address anything that's coming up for us when we become very conscious of what's happening to us in that moment. Okay. So I know a big conversation for today, and I could go on and on and on, of course, in so much more. I really appreciate you taking time to be a part of this conversation, to be here with me. And of course, if there's something, with that I offered here today that really was helpful for you, I really encourage you to, to let me know, comment, send me an email, of course, share this episode with someone who you feel may really benefit from what I've shared here today. And of course, please like and subscribe, here for us. And as we, in building the show and in building, in ensuring that, it helps to increase the I would say the access for other people to get the help, and of course that they require and need as well. And of course, if you have any comments or questions, as I said, please feel free to reach out. I am here to help and support you in whatever way I can, because ultimately, irregardless of what's happening in our lives, there is indeed always a way through. Thank you so much for tuning in, sweet friends. Until next time, bye bye for now.